ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदादतं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः। Sri Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, recorded by M. Sri Mahendranath Gupta, an apostle and disciple of the Master. শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণ ভক্ত সঙ্গে শ্যামপুকুরে ও প্রাণকৃষ্ণের বাটিতে। 1882 दूसरा एप्रिल 2nd April 1882 ভক্ত সাধু সঙ্গে কি উপকার হয়? ঠাকুর Ramakrishna says in the previous one, উপায় sadhu sangha o prarthana. What is the way by which we can realize the God? He says the company of holy men and prayer. Then the question was raised by one devotee, what is the benefit that you get from sadhu sangha? Sadhu sangha means the company of holy men. Sri Ramakrishna, Ishvare anurag hoy, তার উপর ভালোবাসা হয়, ব্যাকুলতা না এলে কিছুই হয় না। সাধু সঙ্গ করতে করতে ঈশ্বরের জন্য প্রাণ ব্যাকুল হয়। যেমন বাড়িতে কারোর অসুখ হলে সর্বদাই মন ব্যাকুল হয়ে থাকে কিসের রোগী ভালো হয়। আবার কারোর যদি কর্ম যায়, সে ব্যক্তি যেমন অফিসে অফিসে ঘুরে ঘুরে বেড়ায়, ব্যাকুল হতে হয় সেই রূপ। যদি কোনো অফিসে বলে কর্ম খালি নেই, আবার তার পরদিন এসে জিজ্ঞাসা করে আজ কি কোনো কর্ম খালি কি হয়েছে? What is the benefit that one gets out of sadhu sangha, company of holy men? Ramakrishna says, Ishvare anurag hoy, তার উপরে ভালোবাসা হয়। Constantly living in the company of holy men who represent God, who are soaked in God, who live in God, who talk God, who discuss God, who meditate on God, you also develop tremendous love for God and taste for godly pursuits. One of the fundamental problems in spiritual life is distaste for higher spiritual practices. Why do we do anything in life? Because we like it. Why do we run behind television? Why do we constantly chat on Facebook and WhatsApp and constantly send messages and video calls? Because we like it. Why do we waste so much time in outward activity? Because we like it. That's why Christ said in the Bible, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. There are certain things in which your heart is there that we consider valuable and therefore we like it. If we consider God valuable, God is your treasure, realization is God is the only aim of human life, then your heart will naturally go there and your tremendous vyakulata, longing for God will arise in you and you will get love for God. Why is it that we don't find God valuable? Not that we do not completely have distaste for higher spiritual practices, but we don't have that kind of tremendous attraction for God that we give up everything else and go after spiritual practice. We are sitting on the fence, but we are constantly living with a person who is godly, a kind of infectious disease that we get. You get infected by his company. In the world, everything is infection that you are seeing in the coronavirus. Was it Ingersoll who said, Swamiji quotes it, if I were God, I would have made health infectious rather than disease. In fact, health is infectious. If you constantly live with a person who is positive, who is healthy, who is always cheerful, you also tend to become that. If you constantly live in the company of persons who keep on crying for everything, they cry babies and negative in mind, criticizing everybody and then depressed all the time, then you also feel depressed. So the company you keep is very important. So you live in the company of godly people who live in God and move in God and get immersed in God, like Ramakrishna, then obviously your mind also will have a tendency to get absorbed in God. And you develop a love for God. By constantly listening to a person, being in the company of a person, breathing the very atmosphere of that person, you come to believe, you come to be reassured that God is a reality and realization of God is possible. The asambhavana, that is impossibility, that feeling goes away. Ishvare anurag hoy, তার উপর ভালোবাসা হয়. Ramakrishna always says in the gospel, আসল কথাটা হচ্ছে তাকে ভালোবাসা. The real truth behind the spiritual life is to love God. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity except to love God and Him only to serve. Thomas A. Kempis, Imitation of Christ. You develop love for God. How? Living with a person who is constantly loving God, immersed in God, feeling so terribly attracted to God. And you also get the infection. You also become infected, you also become enthusiastic about spiritual life. Vyakulata naayale kichui hoy na. Unless you develop that longing, nothing actually happens. That is the meaning of spiritual atmosphere. If you go to a temple or a place where hundreds of people have worshipped over hundreds of thousands of years, then you go to that place, that vibration immediately elevates you. You go to a library, immediately you feel like calming down, quietly sitting down and reading a book. You don't feel like shouting or playing and joking in a library because that is the atmosphere of that place. Hundreds of thousands of people have been constantly absorbed in elevating thought in that library for hundreds of years, some of the old libraries. Immediately you feel awakened. So if you live in the company of a person who is immersed in God, He kindles in you your inner spirit. We have some inclination towards God, doubtlessly. Otherwise, you and I will not be here, and you will not be here listening to this discourse. You certainly have, I certainly have, but it is not intense. The intensity of longing can be increased by the company of a holy man. Vyakulata naayale kichui hoy na. সাধুসঙ্গ করতে করতে ঈশ্বরের জন্য প্রাণ ব্যাকুল হয়. These are all gems which you have to carefully study, meditate and pick up and treasure for life. সাধুসঙ্গ করতে করতে is repeated twice. By constantly being in the company of a holy man, ঈশ্বরের জন্য প্রাণ ব্যাকুল হয়. You develop a tremendous longing for God. যেমন বাড়িতে কারোর অসুখ হলে সর্বদাই মন ব্যাকুল হয়ে থাকে কি সে রোগী ভালো হয়. যেমন somebody is desperately ill, maybe critically ill, Then those who are kids and kin, wife and children, etc., they constantly are deeply worried when the illness will subside. Sri Ramakrishna compares this with toothache, dater vyatha. A toothache is something which is terrible. Those of you who have felt it will know it is sometimes unbearable. And you have to per se do so many things. With some medicine, you keep doing things in the world, go about your job, but your mind is constantly in that. You cannot forget. You do not know what to do. Sri Ramakrishna gives this example of a person with a toothache. How many kinds of things you may be doing, but still your mind is constantly in it. আবার কারোর যদি কর্ম যায়, সে ব্যক্তি যেমন অফিসে অফিসে ঘুরে ঘুরে বেড়ায়, ব্যাকুল হয়ে বলে সেরূপ। পরদিন গিয়ে জিজ্ঞাসা করে আজ কি কোনো কর্ম খালি হয়েছে? Somebody suddenly loses a job, which has happened last 2 years to so many. Then suddenly he is jobless. He doesn't know how to feed his own family, kids and kin. So runs from pillar to post. Is there any work here? Is there any work here? Give me at least a small job. No, nothing is there. You come after some time. Again next day he goes, today is there any vacancy? Ramakrishna's genius is to give the most common practical examples of everyday life to illustrate a great spiritual truth. This is the greatness of spiritual people. They don't give complicated examples. The Upanishads, Gita also give very, very simple example, day-to-day examples, which you can feel in the world, which you see in the world. That vyakulata, tremendous longing from within, as if you're going through all this, but you feel the whole thing is empty. Those of you who have lost your kids and kin, very, very dear persons, your wife or children or parents, God forbid, how many years it takes for the wound to heal. You keep on remembering. Suddenly you remember, tears come to you. You go through life mechanically, but nothing actually really fulfills you. আর একটি উপায় আছে, ব্যাকুল হয়ে প্রার্থনা. Remember this, very important statements. See, Sri Ramakrishna, whenever he always talks about the harmony of yogas. Subtly, if you look at it, he talks about anuraga, bhakti, vyakulata and prarthana, the sadhana, nirjane prarthana, yoga. Then he will talk about vichara, immediately hereafter, jnana, and anashakta karma. Jnana, bhakti, karma and yoga combined. Constantly, this is the teaching of Sri Ramakrishna. He combined all the yogas in one harmoniously. And Swami Vivekananda said, therefore, this is the message of this Ramakrishna to the modern world. Don't be one-sided. Vyakul hoye prarthana. With the deep longing and from the cry within, you cry to God. The logic is very simple. Suppose there is a problem, insoluble problem, you don't know what's the solution. You ask so many of your friends and relatives and read books. You go to so many people, but nothing really touches you. Then you ask yourself, I believe in God, I believe in His power, I believe in His grace. Is this problem unsolvable by God also? Obviously no, because if God cannot solve this problem, what kind of God is He? By definition, God is somebody who is infinitely powerful, Sarva Shaktiman. The three qualities of God which are vouched by all the religions in the world. Ishvara, Sarva Shaktiman, Sarva Vyapi, Sarvaggo. He is omnipotent, He is omnipresent, He is omniscient. So if He is omnipotent, He can do anything, He is infinitely powerful. This problem is not unsolvable by God also. No, He can solve the problem. So go to Him and say, "Oh God, I am just unable to solve this problem. Please solve this for me." Just like a child goes to the parents, the mother or the father, "Oh, mommy, please do this for me. I can't do this myself." व्याकुल हुए प्रार्थना, with a deep longing call upon God, তিনি আপনার লোক, তাকে বলতে হয়, তুমি কেমন দেখা দাও, দেখা দিতেই হবে, তুমি আমাকে সৃষ্টি কেন করলে, সৃষ্টি করেছে কেন? Look at the simple way in which Ramakrishna is teaching. What can be more simple than this practice? You go to God and say, "You should reveal yourself to me, you should show me what is your real Swarupa." You have to, because He is your very own. Sometimes a child goes and pulls the mother by the hair and then gives it a slap also sometimes with gentle hands. Mother is so happy. "No, I will not. No, tell me. You have to show me." Because you feel God is very, very own. This is one fundamental lesson we have to learn from the Kathamrita. Among the several lessons that we learn, the most fundamental, the most important, make God your very own. It is not making, He is your very own. Realize that God is your very, very own. ঈশ্বরকে আপন করে নাও, তিনি আপনার লোক। He is nearer than you from your nearest. He is dearer than you were dearest. He is your very, very own. Even if nobody is there by your side, He is there with you. He is there as the soul of your soul, as your prana of your prana. With every breath of your lungs, He is there. Every beat of your heart, He is there. And every particle of your blood, He is moving. He is pulsating with every vibration of your heart and lungs. He is your very, very own. And tell Him, "You have to show me." Shikra বলেছিল, "ঈশ্বর দয়াময়।" আমি তাদের বলেছিলাম, দয়াময় কেন বলবে? তিনি আমাদের সৃষ্টি করেছেন যাতে আমাদের সফল হয়, মঙ্গল হয়। তা যদি করেন, সে কি আশ্চর্য? মা বাপ ছেলেকে পালন করে, তাতে দয়া কি? সে আপনার বাপ রে। The Sikhs came and said, "God is so compassionate, so kind." Then I said, what is so big about it? If one's own parents take care of the child and then give it love and affection and feed it, is it so strange about it? He is our very own. He has brought us into existence. That infinite power which has brought you and me into existence, that infinite power which makes me talk and speak, protecting me, that infinite power which will ultimately absorb us into Him, that supreme power is our very own. Believe this. Think about it. Practice it. Live it. Some very simple teaching. What is so strange about God loving us? Because He is our very own. If you can develop this kind of relationship of loving nearness to God, then your life will be blessed. That's what He is saying here. মা বাপ ছেলেকে পালন করবে, সে আবার দয়া কি? সে তো করতেই হবে, তাই তাকে জোর করে প্রার্থনা করতে হয়। Father and mother, the parents taking care of the child and loving the child, can you call it compassion? Can you call it kindness? This is what they are supposed to do because of the deep affection for the child. And therefore, you should pray to them. জোর করে প্রার্থনা করতে হয়. He used to call it bhaktir tomo. Force your demand upon him. Cry to him and say, you have to show me. তিনি যে আপনার মা, আপনার বাপ, ছেলে যদি খাওয়া ত্যাগ করে বাপ মা 3 বছর আগেই হিস্সা দিয়ে দেয়। আবার যখন ছেলে পয়সা চায় তা পুনঃ পুনঃ বলে, মা তোর দুটি পায়ে পড়ি, মা আমাকে দুটি পয়সা দে। তখন মা বেজার হয়ে তার ব্যাকুলতা দেখে পয়সা ফেলে দেয়। Simple example say goes. If constantly the child goes on pestering the mother, ma, give me this, give me this, give me this, the mother finally yields and then gives him what he wants. So go on pestering God with tremendous longing and vyakulata because he is our very own. Force your demands upon God. That is Ramakrishna's teaching. Don't be afraid because he is very own. Don't approach God with fear, approach God with tremendous love. সাধুসঙ্গ করলে ব্যাকুল হয়ে প্রার্থনা করা যে প্রবণতা বাড়ে তার উপরে ভালোবাসা হয়। So if you keep the company of holy men, constantly see them praying to God, thinking about God, meditating on God, getting absorbed in God, and living a very godly, divine life, you get so deeply impressed and that infection spreads to you. You also begin to imitate them and then get elevated in spiritual life. Sadhu Sangha korle arekti upakar hoy. One more blessing that you get out of holy company, Sadasad Vichar. See how Ramakrishna is going from bhakti, prarthana, vyakulata to jnana. Many people think Ramakrishna preached only bhakti. No, he preached a combination of bhakti, jnana, karma and yoga, the combination of yogas. Sad asad vichar. Sad means the truth, the reality. Asad, the unreal, the untruth. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, pratyorma amritam gamaya, the Upanishadic prayer. Give up that which is unreal and pursue that which is real. One definition of real and unreal, which is accepted in Vedanta, although there are schools which differ from this, anything which is changing is unreal. Ultimately, it is unreal. If it changes constantly, how can you pin your faith on that? Real is something which is unchanging, which is constant, which is imperishable. Sadasad vichar. Sad nitya padartha arthat Ishwar. Asad arthat anitya padartha. Nitya anitya. Sad padartha, the real, is that which is constant, unchanging. That which is inconstant, changing, is asat. Asad pathe মন গেলেই বিচার করতে হয়. The mind goes to a path which is asat, which is unreal, which is nasty, which is low, which is demeaning, unspiritual. Immediately bring this vichara. He gives the example, হাতি পরের কলা গাছ খেতে সুর বাড়ালে সে সময় মাহুত Dangush mare. Give a simple example which he has seen in the villages. A mahout, the rider of the elephant, who controls the elephant with a small piece of iron, ankush they call it. Dangush, he says. So the elephant is going here and there and he sees a beautiful bunch of banana in the garden of somebody, and then he is raising his tusk and trying to grasp it, immediately the mahout simply gets a big snub on his head, asks the elephant to behave. Don't do this. Similarly, when the mind goes towards worldly objects, sensual pleasures, asat, patha, unreal path, constantly changing and therefore unreal, immediately bring vichara to bear upon the mind. Vichara means sad asad vichar. Sadasad viveka, sadasad vichar, nitya anitya vastu viveka, nitya anitya vastu viveka, sad asad viveka, discerning between the real and the unreal, the real and the unreal, the constant and inconstant. Prativeshi, Mahashai, Papa Buddhi kano hai. So, the Sadhu Sangha, let us recapitulate Ramakrishna's teaching. How does one get love for God? He says through Sadhu Sangha, company of holy men. Then the question was raised, Sadhu Sangha ki upakar hai. What kind of benefit you get from Sadhu Sangha? He says, Ishvare anurag hai, tar upar bhalabasha hai, vyakulata hai. You get attraction to God, you get tremendous love for God, and you develop deep longing to realize God. And also says, by constantly living in holy company, you get the tendency for prarthana with great vyakulata. You pray to God with tremendous longing. One more benefit, he says, sadasada vichar. Clear, discerning, sharp mind you develop, pure mind you develop, by which you are able to discern that which is real from that which is unreal and pursue the real, giving up the unreal. Prativeshi, the neighbor, says, Mahashe pap buddhi kano hai. You say the mind strays away to asadapatha, the unreal path, that which is not proper, improper ways. Why does the mind go towards papa? Arjuna asks the same question in the 3rd chapter. Atha kena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha anichanna vivarshneya baladiva niyojitaha. Arjuna asks, Atha kena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha. Impelled by whom, impelled by what does the mind tread the path of sin? Anichannapi, even though unwilling, baladeva niyojita, as if pulled by some kind of a force, the mind is taken away from the path of goodness and righteousness and purity. Who is that power which pulls him? In the Chandi Devi Mahatmyam, Durga Saptashati also says, Mahamaya has a deluding power. Jnanina amapi chetamsi devi bhagavati hisa palada krishya mohaya mahamaya prayachati. Even the minds of jnanis get deluded and confused by the deluding power of Mahamaya. But when she is pleased, when you pray to her with longing heart, she releases you. Saisha prasanna varada nunam bhavati muktaye. That's also is possible. So the Bhagavan says in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Kamayesha krodhayesha rajoguna samudbhava mahashano mahapapma vidhyena miha vairinam. This kama and krodha, lust and anger, are these two deadly enemies. Know them to be enemies. They completely cover up jnana and then make you stray away from the path of righteousness into the path of sin. Sri Ramakrishna, তার জগতে সকল রকম আছে, সাধু লোকও তিনি করেছেন, দুষ্ট লোকও তিনি করেছেন, সদবুদ্ধি তিনিই দেন, অসদ বুদ্ধি তিনিই দেন. Sri Ramakrishna gives a very broad perspective. In this world of Maya, which is created by God, all kinds of things exist. Dvandva, Shitoshna, Sukha Dukkha, etc. Just like He has created good people, Sadhu Lok, He has also created Dushtu Lok, wicked people. There's people who have Sadhubuddhi, righteous conduct, righteous intelligence, correct understanding, purity. Again, there are people with asadabuddhi, wickedness, improper, impure, and so on. Then the question arises, the neighbor says, তবে পাপ করলে আমাদের কোনো দায়িত্ব নাই? The natural question. If God had created all this good, bad, indifferent, pure, impure, righteous, unrighteous, then do we not have any responsibility if our mind strays away to the path of sin? Sri Ramakrishna, ঈশ্বরের নিয়ম যে পাপ করলে তার ফল পেতেই হবে, লঙ্কা খেলে আর ঝাল লাগবে না. Such a simple example. There's a causality. The world is bound by the law of causality as long as you feel yourself bound by the world of relativity and Maya. Causal chain, causal connection can't be broken. পাপ করলে তার ফল পেতে হবে. If you do something sinful, then you have to reap the fruits of it. If you do something which is elevating punya, you'll get the benefit of it. He gives an example. If you eat chili, very hot chilies, your tongue will burn. You'll feel terribly hot, spicy. If you take spicy food and hot food, your tongue will naturally burn. You can't say, I'll eat chilies and then still my tongue should remain very sweet. It's not possible, because this is a natural consequence as a result of your eating chili. So cause and effect is an inevitable consequence in this world of Maya. সেজবাবু বয়সকালে অনেক রকম করেছিল, তাই মৃত্যুর সময় নানা রকম অসুখ হলো, কম বয়সে এতে টের পাওয়া যায় না. When a person is young, the youth, the sense pleasures are constantly pulling him. All kinds of bad habits a person picks up. Then when you become old, you regret all that. And natural consequence, your body, your mind, everything gets devastated. Sarve indriyanam jarayanti tejaha, Kathamrita says, the power of the senses, the charm of the senses, the brightness of the eyes and your ears and your intellect, everything gets dulled and completely devastated by engaging yourself in the sense enjoyment. Give your mind and body to the world, and the world will destroy them both. And give it to God and you'll feel elevated. Simple formula. So Seja Babu, Mathur Babu, when he was young, he was engaged in all kinds of sensual activities. Towards the end, so many kinds of diseases came and attacked him. Kalibadite bhog radhar অনেক সুন্দরী কাঠ থাকে. Some beautiful special kinds of firewood used to be brought to cook food, the food offering in the Kali temple. ভিজে কাঠ প্রথমটা বেশ জ্বলে যায়, তখন ভিতরে যে জল আছে টের পাওয়া যায় না. কাঠটা পোড়া শেষ হলে যত জল পেছনে ঠেলে আসে আর ফ্যাঁচ ফোঁচ করে উনুন নিভিয়ে দেয়. How simple examples, because he has seen them. So huge amount of beautiful firewood they bring, and many of them are wet firewood. In the beginning, the fire burns them, it goes on burning beautifully. After some time, all the water which is there accumulated within the wood slowly begins to ooze out through the back, and it begins to, it gives the sound also, patch, punch, whoosh, whoosh, etc. It makes sound, and slowly all the water tries to come out of the firewood, and ultimately the fire is put out. So in the beginning you will not know. As you go along, you realize the consequences of all that you have done. ताई काम क्रोध लोभ ये सब থেকে সাবধান হতে হয়. So should be extremely careful about kama, krodha, lobha. The same teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, Trividham narakasyedam dvaram nashanam atmanah kama krodhas tatha lobhas tasmad etatrayam tejet. The mansion of Naraka, the huge building, it is written hell. There are 3 doors, one in front and 2 on the 2 sides. Door number 1, Kama. Door number 2, Krodha. Door number 3, Lobha. Lust, anger and greed are the 3 doors which open into hell. And destruction is sure. Nashanam Atmanaha. One's own destruction, if you want, then enter into hell by any of these 3 doors. Therefore, O Arjuna, tasmat etatrayam tyajet. Give up these 3 deadly enemies, kama, krodha, lobha. In our scriptures, 6 enemies are mentioned, Shad Ripu. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. Kama, krodha, lobha, 3. Moha, mada, matsarya. Moha is delusion, mada is pride, matsarya is jealousy. If you carefully see the genius of our ancients, how they have generalized our enemies into 6. All the various kinds of internal enemies that we fight with in the internal warfare, all of them can be classified into any of these 6. Kama, lust, sensual enjoyment, and thirst, eagerness to constantly go after sensual enjoyment, enjoyment of Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, Shabda, constantly hearing sounds which are not elevating, Sparsha, touch, Rupa, form, Rasa, taste, Gandha, smell. $1 billion industries for each of them. How to enjoy. Kama, Krodha. When Kama is stopped, some obstacle comes in the path of enjoyment, immediately you get fired with Krodha, tremendous anger. A person with anger loses his senses. Sri Bhagavad Gita gives the various steps, 8 steps in fact, for one's degradation. Just like the Ashtanga Yoga in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra and the Ashtanga Marga of Buddha, here you have Ashtanga Sarvanasha. If you want 8 ways, 8 steps to going to destruction. Ashtanga Nasha. 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Dhyayato vishayan pumsas sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamak kamat krodho vijayate krodhat bhavati sammohas sammohat smriti vibhramah smriti bhramshad buddhinasho buddhinashat pranashyati. It's a beautiful step by step, how you come down and down and down. In the beginning, you do not know that you are going down. Shankaracharya gives the example of a ball which suddenly falls on the top of a series of steps. A ball falls in the steps at the top. By the time you can chase it, it comes on top, it comes down. In exactly the same way, the mind comes down so fast without your knowing that it's coming down. First, you start with dhyato vishayan pumsaha. If the mind constantly dwells on the sense objects, that's why he talks about sadhu sangha, company of holy men, holy thoughts. When you are in sadhu sangha, company of holy men, the chances of your thinking of sense objects becomes extremely feeble, very less, because you are in an elevated atmosphere all the time. That's why they say sadhu sangha. Or if you can't get a person, holy person, you do sadhu sangha through the scripture. Read the Gita, read the Upanishads, read the Devi Mahatmyam, read the Bhagavatam, read the Kathamrita. Through that you keep the company of holy vibrations and holy thoughts. Chant. Continuously engage your mind somehow or other in elevating thoughts and elevating vibrations. Yenakena prakarena Krishne mana niyojayet. The mind should be somehow or other engaged in the divine thought, somehow or other. Don't allow the mind any extra time so that it can stray off hither and thither. It should be constantly brought back and put on the Atman or God. Yato nischarati manas chanchalamassthiram tatastato niyamyai tad atmanyeva vasham nayet. Whenever the mind strays here and there, again and again go and pull back the mind, bring it back to the Atman or God. So dhyato vishayan pumsaha, dwelling upon sense pleasures and sense objects, sangasteshu pajayate, the mind gets attached to them. Sangat sanjayate kamaha, through attachment comes desire. Kamat krodho vijayate, from kama, desire comes krodha, when kama is stopped. Krodhat bhavati sammohaha. When you get angry, you become completely deluded. You become like an animal. You do not know what you are trying to do. The vichara goes away, your discernment goes away. What you talk, to elders you talk all kinds of things. You become disrespectful, you become angry, you become like an animal. Short of biting people, you lash out on people, you get so angry, terribly angry. I do not know whether you have seen people getting angry. It's like devils they become. Krodhad bhavati sammoha smriti vibhramaha. You forget the memory that you are an educated person, you are a sadhaka. You forget who you are. All the memory of your old sadhana, everything is washed away. Smriti vibhramshad buddhi nashaha. Your buddhi, discriminative faculty, discerning faculty, your elevating thought, everything vanishes. Destroyed. Buddhi nashat pranashyati. Through that, destruction is complete. 8 steps by which you come down and down, ultimately ending in destruction. So he says here, ताई काम क्रोध लोभ ये शब्द के सावधान होते हवे काम क्रोधस्तथा लोभ तस्माद् एतत्त्रयम् त्यजेत. The Bhagavad Vakya in the Bhagavad Gita, here as if it's a Bengali translation of the same thing. দেখো না হনুমান ক্রোধ করে লঙ্কা দগ্ধ করেছিল, শেষে মনে পড়লো অশোক বনে সীতা আছেন, তখন ছটপট করতে লাগলো পাছে সীতার কিছু হয়. See how even Hanuman Such an enlightened soul, such an elevated soul is a Parshada of Bhagavan. Ramachandra, how he also, because of anger, he completely burnt Lanka Dahana. Then suddenly remember, hey, Sita is there in Ashokavana. Suppose she is harmed, lest she be harmed. He was crying and praying that Sita should not be harmed. Because when you get angry, you completely lose your sense of proportion. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. Sammoha samyak moha, samyak mudhata. Your sense of discernment, your buddhi, everything is being clouded as it were, and karya viveka is lost. What is to be done karya, what should not be done akarya, that discernment is completely lost. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. So, this kama, krodha, lobha, these three are the deadly enemies. The Bhagavad Gita says, kama, krodha, stha, lobhas, tasmad edatrayam tyajet. The Bhagavan says in the third chapter, kama yesha, krodha yesha, rajoguna samadubhavaha. These arise of excessive rajoguna. Vidyena miha vairinam mahashano mahapapma. They are terrible. They can never be pleased, never be satisfied. Sridhara Swami gives an excellent interpretation. There are 4 ways you can tackle your enemy. In the war strategy, they say, Sama, Dana, Bheda, Danda. Sama, negotiate. Come, let us talk. Let us have a discussion. Let's how we can live peacefully. Sama, Dana. Dana is, I will give you some loan. I will give you some aircraft. I will give you some dollars, etc. So in order to buy peace, sometimes you compromise and then give some gifts, give loans. Dana, Bheda. Then play one against the other. One man is inimical to the other man. So in order to tackle this man, you play him against the other man, Bheda. Then Danda, you come down heavily and punish him. So Sridhara Swami says, which of these will work with Kama Krodha? These are terrible enemies. So do not think Kama can be tackled by Sama. You tell, oh Kama, come on, let us talk. Why do you do like this? Because he is terrible. Mahapapma. He is terrible, like a terrorist. You can't negotiate with a person like this. Dana, you think by satisfying him a little, he will be satisfied. All right. What do you want? Acha, you want some sense pleasure? Acha, I will satisfy you for some time. Then you should not again raise your demands. It says, yes, it's all right. The moment you give something, it want more. It's called anala. Ala means enough. Anala means not enough. Go on giving, like fire. Fire is called anala. The more and more you pour ghee into fire, it will become conflagration. So don't try to satisfy it. Dana is not possible. Bheda is also not possible because whatever you may say, it will not accept. Danda is the only way because Mahashano Mahapapma. However much you give dana, it will not be satisfied. Mahashana. Mahapapma. Therefore, Sama and Bheda are not possible. So, Danda is the only way. Come and finish it. Jahishatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasuram. O Arjuna, Jahi, finish him. Don't tackle him softly. Tackle him with the harshest possible way and finish him. So, these are some very simple, practical examples and with illustrations from everyday life. The highest spiritual truths are being taught to us by the Yugavatar, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, for our own good. May this great universal scripture constantly remain in our hearts and minds and elevate our consciousness so that we can live an elevated, pure, godly life and make our lives blessed. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampa Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.